Hello friends, I am Shelley Clough, and for today's video we're going to be continuing with this making a set of 4 cards from one painting. We did these poinsettias the other day, but today we're taking inspiration from this tag, which again a tutorial is going to be coming on later. So we are going to dive in and we're going to try to paint some evergreens and pine cones along the center of this paper and see if we can't make some Christmas cards out of this. Today I have my palette linked below as my starter palette. I have some Canson XL watercolor paper that I've just marked a center line on it. And for a brush today, I think I'm going to use this Perla Esconda brush because it's got a super nice point on it, which is going to help me with those pine needles that I'm making. So the first thing that I want to do is to build out some greenery. So I have some green already here on my palette. I'm just going to mix a little bit more. So this is Viridian Green. It's a really bright turquoisey green. And I like to add some burnt umber to that. It's a brown color. It mellows out that super saturated tone. And it makes it a little bit more of that sort of pine tree green that we're looking for. So I'm going to start with that. I'm actually going to have just a little puddle that's mostly brown that I'm going to use for the stems of my pine needles. So now, because my hope is to use all 4 quadrants of this for cards, I want to have needles going down and going up. So I'm just going to sort of start on this side over here and really thin little line coming up and then start making some of these, see those tiny little flicks? That's what I love about these really precise brushes. This one's a little bit more expensive, but that's one of the qualities that you get with a nicer brush is that the point on it stays really fine and you can get those really precise strokes with it. So for this pine needle, I'm just going and making these really thin little flicks all towards that center stem. And you'll notice I'm not having them all go in the same direction. I am making them go in a variety of directions. So they kind of, some of them will cross over each other, and it just helps mimic the actual shape of the pine needle. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that. Do a little bit of heavier strokes in the middle there, beef it up a bit. Okay, feeling good about that. And now I'm going to have one kind of mimic it on this side. And again, just going through with those little flicks. So, and I'm trying to go kind of quick because the point of these cards is to be able to make Christmas cards for all your friends and family and be able to make a lot of them without spending hours and hours doing it. So I don't want to spend a crazy amount of time doing these pine needles. I do want them to look nice still. So it's just a little dance, trying to move quick, but still make them look nice. And before I get too much further, I want to sort of lay down just a little bit of color to sort of give me a base to work off of. I've just taken this green I was working with and watered it down a bit. I might add a little bit of blue as well. This is ultramarine, just to have a nice cool blue tone. And I'm just going to dab a little bit of that in and around kind of where I'm going to be painting. It's going to look funny right now, but what that's going to do is just fill in some color so that I don't have to do quite as much work with my pine needles. So again, just little like blobs and dashes, trying to get some space between marks, some texture going, and getting a little bit of variation in the height here. So some parts that kind of are popping up and a lot that are lower at the bottom. And I'm planning to paint over all of this, but this will just give me sort of a body of filler so I don't have to do as much work with my pine needles. And I did it nice and light so I can still paint over that and it won't really disrupt my the flow of the rest of my painting. If I'm painting over it, it's not going to create a really strong layer. So I can I can move on from it, or I can paint over the top of it pretty easily. And it's nice and thin, so it's already almost all dry. Like this little spot here is a little wet still, but it's almost all dry already. So I can just start going right on top of that with some more pine needles. So I'm just going to do kind of a flick. I'm using more, and I just stuck my hand in that little wet spot. Won't be the last time. So I'm just using kind of some brown first, and then I'm going to go in with more of a green tone. So that way I have a couple different tones of needles. So there's like more of that brown tone. I'm just going to get this kind of richer green tone. Kind of go in all the directions with these needles. So especially those top ones, you want them to be nice and thin. Down here, you don't have to be quite as careful, but up top, you really want some well-defined needles. Okay, and I'm just tapping a little extra at that stem point there to give some dimension. So it's starting to come together. Do one kind of over this way. Okay, so there I feel like I've got a pretty good base of pine needles now. Before I get too much else going on, I want to build in some pine cones. Pine cones are so fun and cute. And the way that I do that is I start with a nice rich brown color, make it quite pigmented. So I'm just going in with burnt umber, and then to sort of make that even deeper and a little bit cooler, I'm going to add some Payne's Gray. These are a nice dark brown. And for my pine cones, I'll show you how we do those. So I'm going to start with one over here. When I start my pine cone, I start with kind of almost like a teardrop shape on the top. So it's got a little point at the top and a little bit wider base. And then I just make some little marks coming down around it. So I try to do some marks in the middle and then marks on the side. And I kind of try to have them sit all near each other. So I leave little bits of white space out around them. So that first shape's kind of a teardrop, but these later ones are a little bit more scooped. So you can see they're kind of almost like a leaf shape. They're all fairly similar, but they're all a little bit different. I don't want them to be super alike because then it will make my pine cone look a little less organic. Just going to make a couple strokes kind of down here so it looks like it starts to disappear kind of around this pine needle. And maybe even a little bit kind of like this. Like it's hiding behind those pine needles a bit. I think that's cute. And then once you have like your basic shape, you can decide like if I kind of like to have it be a little wider in the middle. You can just build some extra little bits to change that shape a bit. And they can be nice and skinny on the sides because that's sort of where things are disappearing from view. And you can make them look skinnier that way. So I'm going to do a couple different pine cones here. I might do some a little bit smaller. And kind of my teardrop, and then these little swoops on the side. And I just try to remember to have a little mark in the middle here and there. Because if you just do marks on the sides, you'll end up with a very kind of clip art looking pine cone. And those little pieces kind of in the middle here, like this chunk and this chunk, those ones help it look rounded. And I'm just painting kind of around this pine needle that I've put down. Look how cute those pine cones. They're so fun. Okay, I'm gonna do, I think, one more little one over here. And then I'm gonna flip this over and do some facing this way so that every card will have some little pine cones sticking out. So just sort of stacking these and letting them look like they're just popping out from behind these pine needles. Okay, so now I'm going to flip my paper over and make sure I have some pointing this way because we're going to chop this paper in half and have pine cones facing both ways. So just sort of almost mirroring what I did on the first side. Just kind of scooping those pine cones around. Get one kind of going over here. And you'll see every now and then I like to just take the tip of my brush and drop a little extra color where I'm painting. The tip of your brush is like the depositor. And if you ever want to add extra color, you try to apply pressure just on that tip of the brush. The body of the brush is more absorbent, and so if you apply the body, you're going to have more evenness to your color, and the tip is going to deposit things a little heavier. Okay, and I'm going to do a little bit like it's sort of falling off the page over here. A little portion of the pine cone, and then I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. Just right up to the edge here. Okay, feeling pretty good about that. Now I feel like I want to add just a little bit more to create some more visual interest here. I think I want some lighter greenery. So I'm going to mix up the same color I had before, but add a little bit more water and a little bit more ultramarine blue. So it's lighter and bluer. I like to have a different value. So your value is how dark or light your paint is, and then the tone is more the color. And so I like to have a different value and a different tone to sort of shake up the greenery in a painting. So I'm just going to do some kind of light leaves poking around over here. Just sort of wherever, it needs a little something. You don't have to be perfect or very exact. I just want something to mix things up a little bit. Fill in any gaps that I have. Okay. Now I thought something that would be super fun to add to this painting is I have some metallic watercolor paint. I thought it would be fun to do a splatter with gold paint. So I have this tiny little metallic gold paint. It's by this company called Colors by Vita. And I thought I would mix up a little puddle of this. It's going to take just a second to get that puddle all ready for splattering. So again, when I splatter, I always add lots So I get the paint and then I add lots of water to it. I'm just picking up more paint. And once I've got that, I swirl my brush in there. I'm going to do some splatters of this gold. Okay, that's really fun. And I'm not worried about the gold getting on top of my pine needles and whatnot. I think that that's cute. I'm not worried about it. Okay. It's kind of easy to let the splatter get out of hand because it's so much fun, but I think I feel pretty good about that. So I'm just going to make sure this is all the way dry, and then we are going to chop it up. Okay, I'm going to slide this in here, and I'm going to find that halfway line I made before. I can just measure to 4.5 inches because this is a 9 by 12 piece of paper. And cut. Okay, there's the beginning of it, and then I'm going to cut this at the 6-inch mark. Okay, it's looking pretty cute. You know what I did before? I actually cut about an extra 1/2 inch off the top. I'm going to do that on these ones as well, just so that they fit on the card blanks nicely. Okay, so now I've got my cards that have been all chopped up, and I'm going to get my card blanks and we're going to stick them on. So if you didn't see them in the last video, I have these craft card blanks that I bought just on Amazon, and I'll link them below. They just make a cute little frame. So what we do is we take one of these paintings. By the way, look how cute the gold turned out. Can you see it reflecting there? Turned out really fun. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over, and this is my little adhesive roller, and I'm just going to roll along the edges here. And then I'm going to turn it over and carefully place it centered on this. Just want to be careful it's all the way dry when you do this part so you don't smear your painting all over. And look at that. It's our cute little watercolor Christmas card. Now I'm just going to go through and do that to the other ones. All right, here are our finished Christmas cards. Again, we made 4 cards out of just 1 sheet of watercolor paper and a little bit of painting. I think this turned out so cute. I love the gold splatter at the end. I feel like it really makes these special, and the little pine cones are just adorable. So I am so glad that you watched this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know below. If you want to see more videos like this, I would love to hear about it. I'd love it if you subscribe to the channel. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all in the next video.